to just fill the air for the next few minutes and make sure that everyone can hear me, that that my microphone's working right, and that your headphones are working right, or whatever you're using. See some people out on the street. Don't be afraid to turn your cameras on. We love seeing you if you can. This is a community event. Be a part of the community. It is going to be recorded, and there will be an opportunity, of course, for all of you to ask questions. So please, if you have questions, share them in the chat, and then we will get to you if there's time for your question. So that's how we'll be doing it. I will also note, very importantly, that we have closed captions available. So you just have to click on the closed caption button to show your subtitle. And now I can see it. Good, it's working. And what else can I share? I hope you all saw and enjoyed Code of the Freaks, and I hope you know what you're here for. And we're going to get started officially in just 1 minute. I'm holding out on introductions, just making sure that everybody gets settled and that everybody's practicing with their Zoom. Right now is the time when you can flip through and see which of your friends are there. And I'm seeing a lot of friends out there, so good to see you all. Thank you for joining us. And then when we do get started, I recommend moving to speaker view so you could see Lawrence Carter-Long's long hair, and really the way you should, in full force. Anything else? I hope that covers it. And I think we could get started. It's 8:33. Hello, everyone. I am Isaac Zablocki. I am the director and co-founder of the ReelAbilities Film Festival and director of film programs at the Marlene Marison JCC Manhattan. And we're really proud to be one of the partners who's releasing Code of the Freaks this week, along with Kino Lorber as part of their Kino Marquee program. I hope you're checking out all their wonderful films there. And we're really proud that they took on this film. This is a film that we've been involved with from an early stage, or an earlier stage. And we actually had it as our opening night of the 2020 ReelAbilities Film Festival. So at that event, we had our friend Lawrence Carter-Long to actually moderate the conversation. This time he's here and gets to be on the panel. So let me introduce the panel. You all, I guess we'll start with Lawrence, who you saw in the film as well, and is often an active participant at the ReelAbilities Film Festival, and works at the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, and is an all-around troublemaker, which we like.
Trouble's a good thing. Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you, Lawrence, for being here. He's coming to us live from Berkeley. Is that where you are?
That's where I am. Beautiful Berkeley, where I've been for 100 and something days. Yes.
Let me see. I'm also proud to introduce two of the producers and writers of the film, Carrie Sandahl. Carrie, Bodies and Commotion and Disability and Performance are two of the books she's written, and is an active advocate for people with disabilities. Thank you so much for being here, Carrie. Where are you coming in from?
Me, Oak Park, Illinois.
Nice. Good. I love this about Zoom, that we get people from all different places with such ease and didn't have to pay for any plane tickets.
Yeah. Although I miss being there in person with you all. I was so looking forward to it.
As were we, and it's not the same, but
yeah.
But it's really great to get people. I mean, even in our audience, I could see people from around the country, which is something else that's really special. And Susan Nussbaum is here with us as well. She's a playwright, novelist, and longtime disability rights activist. Susan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Can I just let people know that I dropped my cell phone in my wheelchair. I mean, in a place in my wheelchair that I can't really get to. So if it rings, that would be bad, but it might.
Okay, I'm sorry we can't help you. I want to reach. But yeah, hopefully you could fish it out. If it rings, try to mute when you can. That's a new one. And we hope you all got to see Code of the Freaks, either now or during ReelAbilities, or will be seeing it. The most important thing is it's available this week on Kino Marquee, and specifically through the ReelAbilities Film Festival. There it goes. There's the cell phone. We know it's working.
Can't talk. I'll tell you later.
And please tell your friends. We need as many people as possible to see this film. The most important thing, let's just talk like, plain industry basics. For more films like this to get picked up by wonderful distributors like Kino Lorber, people need to see these films. They're a business, Kino Lorber. They need to know that people are interested in seeing these films. They're a good business who cares about diversity, but they also need to care about a bottom line, and they need to know that their films that they're choosing are films that people want to see. So this week, get as many people as possible to see them, and get them to see it through the ReelAbilities Film Festival's channel on Kino Marquee. I don't know. I actually haven't looked to see how many art houses it's playing at. It might just be at ours, but then we get a kickback from the ticket sales too, which is not a bad thing for a nonprofit. So do it that way, and it looks good for us in general. So please, we have here on the call 47 people. If each of you get 10 friends to see it, just 10, then you're getting somewhere. I'd say even aim higher. It's a must-see. Code of the Freaks, and let me start with Susan and asking, what were your hopes with this film?
Well, I was hoping that it would be very helpful in waking people up to the formulaic nature of these movies. And also I was hoping for a live relationship with an audience and at places that I wanted to go to. And so, of course, like everyone, I'm a little let down by being here at home and not with all of you. So, as we all are.
Yes, this film definitely deserves some fanfare and live, and we
some hors d'oeuvres at least.
That was it. the cocktail party. And Carrie, when basically the same question as far as its impact on the audience, a film like this impacting the audience. First of all, in the making of this, was it made for a specific audience? And because I feel it's a little bit, I don't think this is 101, I'll say. To me, I'll say I think this is like a second level class. And I think there are some 101s out there that I've seen, and this is definitely a little bit more advanced, but who did you see as your core audience, and what were you hoping to bring with the film to impact the audience?
Well, we were really going for a general audience. Can you all hear me okay on this? Okay, so we tried to pitch it toward a general audience, and I teach a large disability and film class every year, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times a year. And so I had those students in mind as well. And a lot of the issues and topics that we cover in the film were covered in the class. And so I was hoping also that teachers, professors would pick it up and show it in their classes. So of course, being an academic, the educational market was on my mind. And now I am putting my disability and film class online. And I realized that once I show the film, which I'm going to do on the first day of class, now I can shift the focus to representations by people with disabilities, because I can just keep referring people back to the film and I can do something else. So I'm hoping that's what other teachers can do, is, kind of just get all that out, and then you can focus on, cool crips.
And Lawrence, actually, let me throw you in. It's
Sure.
in perfect continuation of that. Who are the cool Crips? Are there cool Crips? Are there films coming out today that, or in the history that, I mean, this film is more of a critical film, I'd say. But who are the ones that you actually really like, and would you say are the cool Crips? Some that we may have heard of, and some that we should hear of.
Well, I think it's it's an ongoing process, right? It's evolution playing out right before our eyes. So I'd say for the most part, as sort of an industry or what is happening in culture, there's shades of gray here. But I think imperfect beats absent and invisible. So I think we see almost every time we've got disabled folks sort of in front of the camera and behind the camera, more often than not, that bumps up the level of quality of that particular film. So I'm sure I'm going to miss some things right now, but I think what you've been seeing with I've forgotten, you did the chat yesterday with the film in New York, the bus, the Lolo.
Yeah. It's coming to me.
Give me liberty, give me liberty,
Thank
right?
you.
So give me liberty is a step in the right direction, right? If people get a chance to see it, whenever Best Summer Ever comes out, that's a singing, dancing, rock and roll musical where about 65-70% of the cast, both behind the camera and in front of the camera, are disabled. So you're gonna get things, I think, in those films that you just haven't seen before, that we haven't seen before. And my ultimate hope is that 10, 15 years from now, that we'll be doing something like this again, that we'll be talking about how things have changed so dramatically, and how now there's such a long list of films about disability that we like, that we couldn't compile them all. You couldn't sit and watch them all easily one after another. So there's a different movie talking about that difference and that evolution and why it was necessary and long overdue.
So I should have noted that that this whole program is in part in honor, although I think the film Code of the Freaks hopefully would have been released this summer one way or another. But we were really pushing for this time because of the 30th anniversary of the ADA, of course, and ReelAbilities is extremely active during this month. And we hosted some of our short films earlier this month. And then yesterday we recorded an event for, oops, we're not supposed to say that it was recorded. There's going to be a live event on July 26th. As part of the Disability Unite program, which was a conversation on how disability films are transforming the entertainment industry and the diversity that's out there, and it included Steve Way from Rami. If you haven't seen Rami yet, it's really, a fantastic show that happens to have amazing diversity in it. Lola Spencer from Give Me Liberty that Lawrence just mentioned, and Shannon DeVito, who is in Best Summer Ever and was in Difficult People, and is a fantastic actress and person too. So you could check that one out as part of the Disability Unite program, and I think that fits very nicely with tonight's film, which leads me to my next question, which is okay, and this will also connect. One more program that we're doing is Crip Camp. We're having a conversation with Netflix's Crip Camp, the film that opened the Sundance Film Festival this year. If you haven't seen Crip Camp yet, this is your chance. By the way, Netflix has given it to us. For those people who do not have Netflix, those people who have stayed strong and somehow through this pandemic do not yet have Netflix, we have the links. We have the direct links, and Netflix does not normally do this, but we're kind enough to share this to their non-members. So sign up for that and request the link if you want to see it that way. But my question is, with everything that's going on, I just mentioned 3 wonderful actors. Last summer, there was the Peanut Butter Falcon as the most successful indie of the summer, I'm going to claim. And Crip Camp opening Sundance. Is there a revolution going on? Is there change? Pre-pandemic, of course, who knows what's going to be after pandemic, although I feel like it's kind of maybe balanced the playing field a little bit. But I was feeling pre-pandemic that there might be a revolution going on. I would love to hear your thoughts, and let's start with Carrie.
I think for me, what's most exciting is some of the documentary work that's featuring different companies of people with disabilities. So like Kinetic Light, Alice Shepard, Laurel Lawson, Michael Mag, the dancers, and live performance. I saw that Victoria Lewis is in here, and she's been creating wonderful live theater for a long time, and working to increase the pool of actors with disabilities who have training. So I think besides kind of the live performance or documentary about live performers, I do think there's more of a revolution going on television. You mentioned Rami and Steve Way, and I think that has to do with how television has a longer through line. And so every episode is an opportunity to develop the character more. And so I think in that television show, I've just been blown away by the hard hittingness of the television show, and unflinching kind of look, and stories that we don't normally get to hear. That's what I want, is the stories that Hollywood doesn't tell us. So yeah, I think that there's some really cool stuff going on.
Susan, how about you? What do you like out there, and do you think there's a revolution going on?
Well, I'm very behind in my watching of things, but I don't know why I don't much anymore. But I wouldn't say it's not a revolution. There are a lot of things going on, but because I haven't been keeping up by knowing what they are exactly, it's my loss, I think. So, and also I don't think it's a revolution. You know, I think we need to, I think there needs to be something more happening to make it a revolution.
What more do you see? What more needs to happen?
Well, more movies made by disabled people only, and directed and produced and written, as well as performed.
And let me emphasize that also as much as possible, that that the behind the scenes, often we're focused on the actors, and I think personally the creative process really starts behind the scenes, and having people with disabilities. Like, it amazes me how often I don't want to call out, mention any names specifically for this one, but feel free to give your own examples. How sometimes they'll go as far as casting authentically in those rare cases, but the writers in the writers' room have not had any experience with disability. They're just fabulous writers, and losing that authenticity there, I feel, is as great of a sin as in front of the camera, if not more so.
Well, you know, that's been the case for 100-some years. And even when they do make plays or films from books, wonderful books, great books. In fact, a lot of those books are used as examples, or the movies about the books, based on the books, in our documentary. But something gets translated into a cliche in the process of rewriting. And also, many of these books were not written by disabled writers even.
Well, I think that we need to go even further back to training. Until we have an educational pipeline of students with disabilities, we're not going to have the numbers of trained performers. There's a lot of great stuff going on outside of the traditional pipeline, but if we're talking Hollywood, we need to get students through there. And I think that is going to be one of the biggest indicators of what's to come. And right now, unfortunately, I'm not seeing a lot at the university level, either with undergraduates or graduate students of people with disabilities. And the fact that I know a lot of them is kind of sad. It's great because I know them, but it's kind of sad that I can name them. And until I can't name them, then, you know, it's going to be difficult to have a revolution in any number.
I will note, and I'll add on to that, that even beyond being students, I think there's also, of course, just actually getting jobs. And I have to applaud, I mean, again, these are all our friends, but Terry Hartman Squire's Lights, Camera, Access that she does with Lorene Arbus and her support, that actually networks and gets people the jobs. Having the experience on set is crucial for anybody to get involved with Hollywood, and for most people, I think, to learn that they don't want to get involved with Hollywood, but to keep the strong will survive, and to keep those in there who are really eager and still for some reason want to be a part of this industry, and will actually be able to create on every level. And as we all know, filmmaking is a group effort. Lawrence.
Yeah, I would just say, ask me in 5 years. I'll tell you in 5 years whether or not it's a revolution, right? Because in addition to all the things that people are saying, right, about the pipeline and about getting opportunities and all of that, you know, part of it is because we haven't seen disabled directors to the large degree, or producers, or showrunners, or writers, people in writers' rooms. In the conversations I'm having, folks are still kind of gobsmacked by it and going, oh, I never thought that could be a career choice for me, because they've never seen anybody with a disability doing it. So I think as more and more of these newer opportunities, these films, modern films sort of get out there, more and more disabled people can think of themselves as creatives and get into that pipeline. You know, there are people like Nick Novicki at the Easter Seals Disability Film Challenge, which just wrapped. Right? I'm in the middle of watching all those 5-minute movies right now. That's a great way for people to kick the tires and test the waters a little bit and see if this is something they like, right? Make a short film, put it into competition, get your name out there, get a little bit of experience. I think those sorts of things are really, really important. And as a community, I think it's necessary that we support folks and give them a boost every time those opportunities arise, because like you were saying, with telling people about code and renting the film and getting folks to share it and tell others about it, right? It's $12. It's $12. You can afford $12. Do it. Because if you want to see more movies like this being made, or if you want to see the movie being made 20 years from now, where we're talking about the stuff we like, you've got to support this stuff today.
Fabulous. So, as some of the reactions from Code of the Freaks, I mean, these are stories that, I mean, I know that ReelAbilities has been talking about this for now 12 to 13 years. We've been talking about these topics and trying, hopefully, to show the films that actually, I think, are not in Code of the Freaks, and the better examples that exist out there. And I'm wondering if you had any reactions to the films so far of people who are like, wow, this, I never realized that this film, you know, actually did not play nicely towards people with disabilities, or however they came across it. What were kind of the more surprising reactions from audiences? Susan, do you want to start?
Well, you know, I'm so jaded now, and it's all the fault of this movie, Code of the Freaks. When nothing surprises me. So it's not like, wow, that movie doesn't get it, doesn't get me. I don't believe that situation, or all of the many kinds of ideas that might occur to people while they're watching this breakdown of various movies. But, you know, things that I would suggest are hard to come up with.
Okay.
can I answer that one?
Oh, please, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
I've noticed a trend among reviewers. It hasn't been reviewed a lot, but we've got a number of, let's just say, not so stellar reviews. But it seems like the reviewers are, their primary beef with our film is that we're not positive enough. You know, that we're not.
Got to be grateful. We got to be grateful.
Yeah, and we've had that reaction sometimes with live audiences, because we've shown works in progress in a lot of different places, and they almost get angry at us. We've had some angry reactions because they, I guess, are uncomfortable with us not, I guess, ourselves being very inspirational. I'm not sure.
I think people get attached
Yeah, they get
to
attached.
these certain movies for all sorts of reasons,
That's
even
true.
though those movies are destructive in some ways that are important.
But the disability community tends to love it. So we've got, and they're the community, I think, that we, are most concerned about what they think. So it's good.
And they actually technically make up 20% of America. So hopefully that's an audience that's worth going after. We just need
and we're seeing that happen culturally in other areas as well. I mean, look at all the attention that was brought to Gone with the Wind when HBO Max decided it wasn't going to show it without some sort of context, right? So one of the things I learned when I did the projected image with Turner Classic Movies in 2012, right? Because we showed, I don't even remember what it was 5 different nights, 4 or 5 movies each night. Everybody's got their favorite movie. Maybe they watched it with their grandma, or whatever the reason is that they have an affection for that film. And so the folks aren't always open, at least initially, to any criticism of that film because it's an emotional connection. It's a heartfelt connection for whatever reasons they brought to it. But what I see happening, as people stop and reflect, there's that initial shock. Oh my gosh, I never thought about it before. But after they've had a little bit of time to digest it and think about it and mull it over, then you can go a little deeper. But I think this movie, for most folks, if you're not disabled, and even if you are disabled and not involved in media or history, it can come as quite as a shock because you've never been confronted with this before, disabled folks included. We've always been inspirational or tragic. They've either trying to cure us or kill us. If you haven't seen anything else, then you think that's the only damn thing being made. And I think that it's a good shock to the system because it can kind of shake things up just enough that we can think critically about it and then move forward in different directions.
And I think right now, sorry, please, Susan.
Okay. Well, there was a time when I don't even know how long ago, 30 some years ago, when I was just, when Access Living, the Disability Rights Office in Chicago, was just starting up, well, maybe 40 some years ago. And I saw Whose Life Is It Anyway with Richard Dreyfuss. And I remember thinking, something's wrong, but what is it? Because I couldn't come up with the sentence that nailed it. And I went on Roger Ebert's program. And at one point I was so confused that I tried to somehow justify the fact that the character shouldn't be allowed to kill himself because, well, it was really fun being disabled or something. I don't know. And when I met Carrie and other people and developed a consciousness of my own, and it was so appalling to see any of these films. You suddenly had a language for it, a vocabulary for it, and a whole book loaded with feelings about these movies. And one time I was walking down the hallway of a movie theater with Carrie after we had seen Avatar. And, you know, Carrie is very funny about her particular taste in films. And yes, there's a lot wrong with the movie. And like the disabled guy lead was not supposed, well, he wasn't disabled. And he led all the native extraterrestrials in war because he was the white guy, and those kinds of problems and common problems. And Carrie recognized that when in the movie characters would come to a rite of passage, they'd all be given a very large bird, and then they had to tame the bird by beating it. And Carrie called it bird rape. And oh boy. So it's very educational to be with.
Well, and it reminds me of what you say in your interview, Susan, about, you know, I mean, I still watch the movies. I still teach them. I still enjoy. I love movies, but it's also fun for us. I don't know how it is for anybody else out there to kind of gather with your community, your people, your family, your friends around talking about the movies. So yeah, Susan and I, we're a little traumatized by that movie, but it was like one of the most fun afternoons I could ever think of. So, you know.
At least you could have fun with it. I want to first of all remind the audience that we would love to make you a part of this conversation too. So you could submit your questions through the chat, and then we'll call on you. If you want us to ask a question for you, if it's easier for you to type the question, we can do that. If you just want to ask your question, you could also raise your hand by clicking the participants, and then you can raise your hand there. I think that's where you find it. We'll share that information. Or just raise your hand and we will find you to make sure that you have the opportunity to ask your question. But let me put this one piece together before we go to questions from the audience. We are experiencing, hopefully in America right now, a true revolution of diversity. And I think what this film does is it makes it clear that, I mean, unfortunately, the largest minority in America is often the most forgotten minority in America. Lawrence Carter Long will say, "We are the D in diversity." Is that, am I quoting?
That's it. Disability puts the D in diversity right there at the front of the word. Right. And
a film like this, and I think it needs to, of course, go beyond the film, and it needs to be a part of the movement, is to make sure that that our community is not forgotten within, you know, when the Simpsons are making sure that all of their voiceovers, their voice actors are right for the people that they are representing, to make sure that disability plays that part too. Why is that something? Why is it so important for there to be authenticity in these kinds of roles, from your perspective?
Well, I'm not sure there's, I think that one of the dangers is when we have disabled actors playing disabled characters, and it is one of these more cliched storylines, then audiences think it's more authentic because a real disabled person's in it, or they think that somehow our community rubber stamped it as something good. So I think that probably like other minority groups, once we are in those positions, we can make subtle changes. We can move the dial a little bit. I've talked with friends who've been able to work with directors, producers, writers to make some changes to make their characters more complex. So I think it's possible. But in talking about diversity, when we were doing the film and we wanted to talk about representations of race and disability, that's intersectional issues, we kind of came to the realization that there were really mostly white people. We could probably call this film about disabled white people, except for disabled African-American men. Where are the Latinx disabled people? Where are the the Asian American disabled people, any other group that's not white, where are they? They're part of our disability community richness too. So I would really love to see more diversity within the disability community, and more different types of impairments too. Maybe ones that are not so, easily made inspirational. I think that the wheelchair is such a strong symbol of disability. I mean, it's the one we use in our culture to mark parking spaces and to indicate any kind of disability. But there's so much more, to do. So that was my rant about diversity and disability representation.
Who wants to go next?
Well, I just break down the numbers, right? So if you go by the official government figures, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they will tell you for the last 2 years at least that there are 61 million disabled people in the United States. That's the folks who will report it or will identify. The percentage breaks down to 26%. That's more than 1 in 4 of the individuals. Now, film varies a little bit year to year. This year's just been upended altogether. But if you look at it on, let's say, TV, we were talking a little bit about TV earlier, the number of disabled characters is around, on a good year, 2%. If you're talking about disabled, that's just disabled characters, not portrayed by disabled actors. If you want a disabled actor to portray a character, then you're getting like 0.002% or something along those lines. So even by the most conservative estimates, we've got 24% or something to make up. So I think, the most juice for me, and what I'm most interested in seeing and what I get most excited about when in doing this work, is disability at the intersections, right? Where are those stories about Black students with ADHD who are being assaulted by police officers in the classroom and then get thrown into the school to prison pipeline, right? I want to see those stories. Where are the stories of people with disabilities who live outside the US trying to come to the US to get a better life for themselves or whatever, who can't get in because of the public charge rules that Trump is trying to get across and saying, if you've ever been on public assistance, we're not going to let you in, right? Those are disability stories too. And, we haven't seen those told yet either. And I think particularly in times like these, they're more important than ever.
Susan, before we open it up to questions from the audience, did you want to share on this?
What, me? Did you say something to me?
Did you want to share on this topic of
I'm good.
Diversity question? You're good. I would love to then bring the audience now into this conversation and take your questions. We do have a question from our friend Beth. Beth, you're on the line. Beth, can you hear us? Beth Heller.
I'm unmuting myself.
I hear you. Good.
Okay, so my question is about the disabled people reacting to the films in Code of the Freaks. So can you talk about the importance of including disabled people's reactions to Hollywood representations in Code of the Freaks? To me, I think that's a really crucial part because for my disability studies students, they really learn the most, I think, from hearing from disabled people and the impact those representations have in their lives. So you can talk about just including that feedback that you're getting from the disability community.
The problem is, well, I personally, and I would imagine the 4 of us that made this film haven't had an opportunity really to interact with groups of disabled people, or, I mean, not even online. And this is the first time, although it's not the first time I've been on a panel online, it's certainly the first time I've seen a face, and it's a very nice one, who is asking a question or somehow asking about a response. You know, what is my experience with now that I've made this film? And I can't tell you what people are saying. I can't. I don't know, because, you know, COVID.
Well, in the film, when we were trying to figure out how we wanted to tell our stories, we thought that we would try to make this film from a disability community perspective, even though we ended up doing, you know, kind of talking head interviews. We wanted to create a sense that there was a disability community by showing lots of different people and not all of us agreeing. I think that was important to us as well. And it's funny, I feel like I got cast as the disability wet blanket. Somehow in the editing, it's like I always come in with like the mean thing to say. That was just, you know, I'm not quite that much of a wet blanket. But we really just love the hilarity of the disability community. And it was just important to us that audiences heard that these films have a huge impact on how we're understood by the general public, but also how we experience ourselves. I think the moment in the film when Techie talks about Heidi, and I mean, that was a really powerful part of the interview where she talks about how it impacted her, you know, thinking that she would be able to walk and having expectations, and how that kind of affected even how doctors treated her. And I think we all have stories like that. And it was important that people hear it. It's like, yeah, it is a movie. People sometimes say to me, well, they're just movies. It's just Hollywood. It's not just a movie. It's not just Hollywood. They reflect, I think, how we're treated, how we're understood, policies that are made about us. It's way more than just a movie. We wanted to get that across.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at, you know, recent examples, films like Me Before You, right, which was an assisted suicide film that, you know, was trumpeted and applauded by folks that are sort of pushing for more assisted suicide as something that they wanted, right? Not recognizing that there have been, to my counting, 35 different films about assisted suicide, disabled people begging others to kill them or let them die since 1915. Right. And so if that's the only message you see, or if that's one of those dominant messages, 35 of those movies saying the same thing, you're probably going to think that most folks feel like they're better off dead than disabled. Right. And that influences public policy. I mean, we've heard when I was at the National Council on Disability in DC, we heard about how legislature in Iowa, I believe it was the state of Iowa, changed their minds on increasing protections for, in a positive way, for parents with disabilities after seeing the film I Am Sam, right? I wouldn't be sitting here literally talking to you about this topic right now if I hadn't gone into $1 Million Baby and gotten ticked off by what I saw. Right, I had a career 17 years in doing media and animal protection that I pivoted and went hardcore toward doing disability rights because I was angry. And because when I tried to have these conversations with people, they would say, oh, it's just a movie. And what's the problem? And it's a personal choice. And it's like, wait a minute, if that's the only choice you're offered, it's not a choice, right? And if you're not asking why someone's making that choice, then you've missed the point. And so, you know, it can go, I think, many different directions, but it requires us to, I think critically and to question, to get beyond from where we are to where we need to be.
And it's hard to confront the public who don't understand our profound reaction to these films. I was at the dentist's office, a couple of years ago when You Before Me, or Me Before You came out, which is the movie you were just talking about, Lawrence. And they called my name and I went up to the non-disabled young woman who was behind the computer typing me in. And I noticed she had a book. And I said, well, what are you reading? And it was me before you. Oh, no, no. Well, it was me before you, but that's not how it happened. Anyway, I said, well, I know about that book and the movie that goes with it. I haven't read it, and we ended up having this conversation about why disabled people dislike the movie. And it went nowhere. I couldn't engage her at all in what kinds of, how this impacted me and people like me.
I do think
She
it's
said,
somewhat, oh, sorry.
She said that it was the character's individual decision. And you try and say, well, if you can, how could it be his individual decision when I've seen this exact movie many, many times before? Just different names.
Lawrence, you were going to say?
I've forgotten what I was going to say. It's okay.
That's right. Yes, we have become the #1 promoters of this film. We mentioned, do not see You Before Me or Me Before You, whatever it's called. This is the most important message of all of that, because that movie made way too much money in the box office. And while films like Code of the Freaks need to be making that kind of money. And I want to take another question from the audience. Thank you, Beth, for being a part. Our next question is from Moira. Moira, you're on the air.
Hello, and thank you very much for taking my question and for making the film. You've touched on this a bit in terms of the question of intersectionality, and I wondered if you could say a little bit more about how you either have or plan to work with groups that are tackling these same questions of representation, either racially or in terms of sexual orientation or gender stereotypes, and ways that maybe we can sort of come together in kind of challenging many stereotypes of representation. And I wonder whether too, if someone mentioned, I'm sorry, I forget which of you, but someone mentioned the question of Gone with the Wind. And I wonder if that kind of thing could be an entree into having people not feel quite so fragile, to borrow a term from that's become popular in our discussions of white privilege, but to think about sort of how it's important to think critically about representation of disability as it is to think critically about representation of race and ethnicity and gender and so on. So thanks very much.
I remembered what I was going to say before. And I think part of this is in some ways generational. I did a panel discussion earlier today, an institute with the ACLU that had folks from GLAAD and Color of Change and other organizations on that do similar work within the media landscape, if you will. And, these were high school students, a couple hundred of them, who totally got it. Like I was not on the defensive at all during that entire conversation. And the only thing they kept saying to me is, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then more, please give me more. And 5 of these young folks emailed me after the panel was over. So I think we're sort of at a time where we have to be deliberate and conscious and kind of in your face, if you will, to be able to make the most of this moment. I think you got 3 groups, generally speaking: those who are with you, those who are against you, and those who are on the fence. I spend about 85% of my time trying to talk to those who are on the fence, because you've got some wiggle room there. But I'm finding more and more. I'm 53 years old. I'm finding more and more younger generations, I don't have to explain why anymore. They're eager and ready for it. They just want to know what they can do.
Yeah, I found that too with my students. I teach at University of Illinois at Chicago, and we are minority majority school. And in my class, it's like the students catch on right away. One of the things I have to do with them is kind of pull them back a little bit, because they want to act, they want to do something about it immediately. And so they tend to jump to something that you know, well, if it were that easy, we would have done it by now, kind of thing. But I love that enthusiasm in them, and they do a lot to connect with the film from their own cultural perspective. And I've learned, you know, lots of great things from my students. I also, for the person who asked the question, would encourage you to do, to Google disability justice, the term disability justice. The folks who are conceptualizing disability justice are looking very specifically about disability as an intersectional issue. And it's a different perspective, I think, than disability rights, where we love our disability rights and we love our ADA, but people who are in the disability justice movement are really calling attention to those issues. And somebody on the chat was talking about the Bay Area being a hotbed, I guess, place. And so I would check out Google Sins Invalid. They've got a couple of documentaries out about the theatrical work that they do. And they address, you know, all those intersections that you were wondering about. I think you would find it really interesting.
Susan,
I would love to see the work of the next generation of Crips. Oh boy, because I feel old, and you know, I am old. So I forget how youth is very different. It's a very different perspective. And people are really.
And I've also noticed that the younger generation, people coming up, they're making disability identity more complex. And so as someone who's just embraced disability identity myself, I've felt challenged, but in a great way. So we've got people that I've just started to call it disability adjacent, because I think I'm trying not to perpetuate the, you know, white people practice of just thinking every group has to, you know, be like you know, like, you know, so we have people who are MAD activists who are, you know, not claiming disability identity, but claiming MAD identity. And then we have neurodiversity. So folks who primarily who are autistic or have some other, you know, mental disability. And they're not claiming our term either, or they might claim both. But lots of different folks are talking about impairment, but in a different way. And hearing all those voices, they come from some reason wanting not to really identify with disability. And I think the movies have something to do with it. They're like, oh, we're not those people, you know, we're actually more like this. Anyway, I throw that out there because I think there's so much interesting stuff coming out that's going to ask us to really broaden how we think about disability and cannot be captured in those cliched films.
How do they feel about handy-capable? Not good?
Yeah. They can have that term if they don't like disability.
I think that always sounds like the Batmobile for a disabled superhero.
We have time for 2 or 3 more questions from the audience. So let me take another one. The next one is from Elle. Elle, are you there?
Hello. Can you read it? Can you see my question?
I can see it and I can see you.
Okay. Because I don't remember what I said verbatim, but basically I'm working on a script with my daughter. She's worked in the film community before she became disabled. She was a production assistant and an actress. And since her disability, she's continued on, and we're working on this script together. She works with me at the extras casting agency that I have. Her biggest hurdle, and it's tough for me as her mom, and having been in the HR space for a very long time myself, to see the lack of patience with individuals that say they want to help and want to work with her and want to give her opportunities. But when that comes up face to face, there is certainly a lack of patience. And what are your suggestions? I'm sure you've confronted this and seen it and deal with it. And I'm never sure, being so new to this with her, how to tell her to politely handle it.
I don't know if it can be politely handled, especially if you have an agent, because the agent will tell your daughter and you that you have to just give it your all and be very, you know, sort of puppy-like around the people who are doing the casting. It's a miserable business. There are no good answers, in my opinion. Many thousands of years ago, I remember finding the audition process to be really offensive also, you know, like you and your kid. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, sadly, I think Susan's absolutely right, is that if you don't push, if you don't force the issue, if you don't really, you know, like are very clear and dogged in the way you approach it, then you're going to be left in the dust. It's really only those people, and this is for non-disabled actors too. I mean, it's really like you've got to find whatever way works for you, but you've got to occupy that space. And if you don't occupy that space, then somebody else will. So you've got to find, you know, whatever that comfort level is, whatever that zone is, test the waters a little bit. But if you don't push it, they're probably never going to get it. So it's sad to say, and it's not fair, but it's probably down to you, at least at this stage.
And I think that Elle brings up a good point that that I think is a problem in our community, is that those folks with disabilities that may affect their stamina, energy, chronic pain, these types of people who have these impairments, including myself, I'll count myself in. It's almost impossible to keep up with what goes on a movie set. I used to be in live performance and theater, and I can't do evening rehearsals anymore. I can't guarantee that for the run of a show I would have the stamina to continue doing that kind of work. So that was actually one of the impetuses for working on this film. We worked on it for 10 years. So we were able to take it through lots of ups and downs in our group, and you know, we worked on it as we could. I think that what disabled people are doing is creating their own type of work in which we can be how we are without making ourselves sick to participate. And I think that our disabled filmmakers are going to change not only the films themselves, but the process of making films to be more inclusive of people like your daughter. And that's going to be really important to get back to that diversity question, to really show our community in all its complexity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can't be forced to overcome and be inspirational about everything. Like, I'm tired, just give me a break.
And there are motions within the industry. I mean, I conducted a series of interviews last year for ITVS. ITVS is sort of the feeder organization for shows like Independent Lens and Point of View on PBS, with film directors and people working in the industry asking those specific questions. What do you need? What don't you have? What obstacles did you encounter? What would help? And so they came to me and asked me to conduct those interviews. And so I think that's a step in the right direction, right? But unless we kind of put ourselves out there and recognize that and identify and do all these sort of things so that we're recognized, not, you know, people still think of disability as an incident or an accident, right? But the definition has continued to change, right? If you ask folks who have grown up under the ADA for the last 30 years what disability means to them, they're going to tell you things like culture, community, constituency, history, identity, right? It's not at all about diagnosis for them. And, but the rest of the world hasn't gotten that memo yet. So I think we have to sort of put ourselves out there sometimes and help other folks redefine the word based on how we see it and how we experience it.
Maybe your daughter would benefit from, you know, going to more disability culture events and meeting people and seeing what is going on in this parallel culture now, because we have one. Incredibly, we have one. And that might give her you know, a forum inside of which she can create her own work. And also it may give her the sort of psychological nourishment to withstand the slings and arrows, you know, from those casting people. Mm-hmm.
I want to get to the last two questions here, and this is fabulous. And there is, by the way, a very strong, growing community on all sides of the work in the industry, and many different ways to join in and to be a part and to get active, and just look at all the different competing organizations that are out there, from the casting side, from the production side, from the networking side, and it's great to see that there is so much activity. But let's take our last two questions. We have a question from Eileen. Eileen, are you on?
Hi.
Eileen?
Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks. So I think it was Isaac who mentioned people who still don't have Netflix. That would be me. And I hadn't seen like any of the films that were discussed in Code of the Freaks, but now I know I don't have to see them, so thank you. But so my knowledge of Peter Dinklage is old. I have not seen Game of Thrones. I haven't seen any of his recent roles, but a long time ago, I saw him in The Station Agent and I saw him in Death at a Funeral. And I was really struck by the normalcy of those roles, the depth, the centrality of his characters. I have no idea what he's done since then, except as I mentioned in my comments, seeing him run around naked with Leslie Jones on Saturday Night Live, which was awesome. But I'm wondering, you know, is he someone who's managed to, throughout his career, maintain, you know, good quality roles? What type of work has he been able to get? Do you feel he's an exception? Do you think his roles are good? I just wanted to get your feedback on that.
I think his roles are very good. And he also does theater. Amazing performances and starring roles. So I think he's an exception. I really like his work. And, you know, I can't explain it. What happened? I guess he's just very gifted. But that doesn't always matter. Most of the time, it doesn't really matter.
I think he's very picky too. He's consciously said, you know, in some of the interviews where he's talked about this, that he won't do roles that are sort of stereotypical or that you've seen before. He purposefully looks for sort of you know, out of the ordinary kind of casting in the roles and things that he picks, because he wants to be against type, and he wants to, I think, sort of grow as an actor and also challenge the audience in the best possible ways.
Let me take one last question from Miriam. Miriam had her hand up, and I want to get to people who possibly couldn't add to the chat. Miriam.
Hi. I live in New York City. I've spent a lot of summers in the Bay Area, and which was transformative to me, of seeing the range of disability activism and people with severe disabilities in the community. I had been this is something that just happened. I'd been a long time fan of their political theater, San Francisco Mime Troupe. And I was very excited because now they're doing it remotely. And oh, I haven't seen it in years. No closed captioning. I couldn't understand most of it. I emailed them and they said, well, we haven't gotten up to it. And I was profoundly disappointed by an organization in the Bay Area that neglected to realize that some people could not follow it and could not hear it. And it kind of hit me hard because I always extol Berkeley and my memories and experiences of the Bay Area and assume, oh, that would never happen there. People have this awareness, and it's a process still has to be negotiated, reminded, and so on. They got about 5 emails from me, and they said they're going around the country and they would try to do it later on. But just my little footnote to the conversation, I was very disappointed that they hadn't thought of it.
Thank you, Miriam. I'll take this opportunity actually to ask our panelists for your final notes, your footnotes to the film. You know, it's after you had to lock it. What have you learned since then that you would like to add? What's good that's out there? What haven't we shared yet that should be shared? What are you excited about? Any good foods that you've tried recently? Anything you could add? I'm going to start with Carrie.
Thank you.
Since the pandemic has hit, there's been so much activity online by artists with disabilities, and it's made it more available to a lot of people. And I think that's been kind of a saving grace for me. And there was a question that came up of why we named the film Code of the Freaks. And one of the reasons why I was attracted to it is because it comes from that line that we put in the beginning of the film, the quote from the carnival barker who is talking about, you know, you offend one, you offend them all. And that film has a very, has a wonderful cast of actors with disabilities, and it's one of the very few ever. And we like their sense of community, their sticking together, that offend one, you offend them all. And so we also were thinking that we're kind of cracking Hollywood code of what the formula is for a disability film. So that was just like I saw that question came up. I thought I'd address it and it hadn't come up yet.
Susan.
What do I take away?
What's coming up next? What are you excited about? What did you learn from in the process that hasn't been mentioned yet?
Well,
last thoughts.
I think what I need to do is get a list of what stuff is out there and then watch it. Because I don't know. I mean, I'm really unaware of some of the things that are happening in my own community.
Lawrence.
I'd say if people are hungry and want to continue down this path and want to learn more about the history, and it's a, you know, it's a messy history. It's a complicated history. It's a fascinating history of disability in film. I can announce this for the first time. You know, I mentioned a project I did with Turner Classic Movies a few years back. They're going to bring me back for one night on September 25th. And the focus of that evening's menu of programming is going to be authentic representation in classic Hollywood. So you're going to see a film with Lionel Barrymore, who became disabled as a result of a fall and had rheumatoid arthritis, continued to work for 20 years after he started using that wheelchair. You've probably seen him as Mr. Potter and It's a Wonderful Life. He's in a bunch more. We're going to screen one of them. There's Susan Peters, who became disabled after a gunshot accident. They purchased the rights to a book called Sign of the Ram, starred a wheelchair user who's as vicious as any Joan Crawford character that you've ever seen. We're going to give Susan her spotlight as well. We're going to do Michael Dunn, a little person who received an Oscar nomination in '65 for Ship of Fools. Give his credit to due. We're going to do the Turner Classic Movies premiere of Tinnicut Follies, which was a documentary done in the late '60s that they kept out of circulation for 25 years because they were ashamed. It was a documentary of the conditions that it depicted and that it showed inside a state institution in Massachusetts. You're going to be it's one of the rare few times that film has screened, and it's going to be a premiere for Turner. So if you want to do more, I'm excited to show some of the positive things and some of the faces and the names of classic Hollywood that are positive. September 25th.
I want to thank all of you. I want to first of all say everyone needs to, if you haven't seen yet, Code of the Freaks, and this was just your warm up, go now. Tell your friends, get people to see it. It's available this week. We put the link in the chat, so please check that out. Also, check out all the other programs that we're doing through ReelAbilities for the 30th anniversary of the ADA. So check those out too. There's a lot more going on this month, especially. So this is a time to really be active and be a part of this conversation and part of this movement. So thank you for joining us tonight. Spread the good word. Thank you all for being a part. Thank you to the community, and thank you to Susan, Carrie, and Lawrence. And have a good night. Stay safe. That's the most important thing, folks. Please stay safe, and we hope to see you in person soon.
Thank you for making me part of your film, guys, and thank you for doing this panel, Yitzi.
Yeah, and thank you, ReelAbilities. They've been such a huge boost for us, and we really appreciated all that you've done to get our film to an audience.
Thank you. Thank you.
I second that emotion.
It's in your hands now, the audience. Have a good night, everyone.